I'll switch subjects on you. This is for Representative Jinkins and Senator Pedersen. You sent out a news release yesterday that's sort of a rallying cry to defend transgender people. What prompted this, and what I'm driving at is, do you feel threats are coming from within the state of Washington, or are you feeling that the threats are coming from the feds? And second, other than waving the flag, do you have any specific legislative measures that you want to introduce on this topic?
Well, I mean, as Speaker, I look both nationally and locally what's going on. So you can look through the bills that were filed this session in the House, and there are certainly bills that are attacking trans people and trans youth in particular that have been filed in the House.
I'll be disrespectful to the Republicans. They're the minority party, and they file lots of bills that never go anywhere.
That's very true, and we know that, John, but you know what? The trans people and the parents of trans youth out there do not know that. The mere filing, the number of calls that I get just by the mere filing of a bill like that, like Rep. Jacobson has filed a couple of those, the number of calls that I get is extraordinary, and people are petrified for their kids and for themselves. So it is not, I mean, I can certainly sit here and say those bills are not going to get a hearing, they're not going to move forward, and that's what I tell these parents, but it doesn't stop the concern that they feel for their children. And then when we see what's happening at the national level and the executive orders, and the very first executive orders issued definitely were attacks on trans youth to a large extent. So it is important for people in this state to understand that Washington will remain, and that the House and Senate Democrats will remain a place that will look to protect trans people, transgender people, and transgender youth, and youth who have questions about their gender identity, so that they have the safety to process through all of those things. And that we will work very hard to maintain the protections we have. I mean, Washington State has some of the strongest protections in the nation, and we will look to keep those protections.
The parents and the kids who call and text don't know that those bills are not going anywhere. That is harmful to them, and that is true in a number of areas.
Yeah, and I'll just say, you know, you'd think a House bill, like you wouldn't, if you know the process well, you wouldn't start worrying about a House bill too much until it had made it a long ways toward the Senate. My office has received over 500 contacts from my constituents living in my district about House Bill 1038. Now, the fact that I even know about a bill that is never going to get heard in the House is a sign of how alarmed people are. And this atmosphere of persecution and fear that's coming from the Trump administration means that I've got kids who are, and parents who are worried, sick, whose mental health is suffering because of their perception of being under attack. So when Speaker Jinkins suggested that we send out such a message, I was absolutely delighted to join her in that, because I feel like we have an obligation to the people of our state to let them know that we have their backs, that we are going to do everything that we can within our power to make sure that Washington remains a safe and welcoming place for them.
Do you have any legislation or even a resolution to address this that would be going through the legislature?
Well, I do think that the bills that we started off this press availability talking about in the House and the Senate relating to last year's parental rights initiative, that part of the work that's going on with those bills is to clarify the law, so especially young people and families and schools can have clarity in terms of what they can do, what is limited, and we've kind of already talked about that. So I think those are kind of some of the biggest pieces of legislation that we have going forward this year. And then it's really protecting the laws that we have passed historically to make sure that nothing gets rolled back, and certainly we won't allow that to happen this year either.
And that was a lot of the work that we did in 2018, 2019, in making sure we are protecting all Washingtonians. And if you take a look at the bills that we did in terms of access to health care, access to gender-affirming care, addressing hate crimes, that was all because of the concerns with the Trump administration. And so you don't see a slew of a lot of those bills because we have been protecting Washingtonians from his first administration. And so now it is about making sure that if there are any loopholes in those laws, we're closing them, really making sure we're reminding people that in this Washington, we will be protecting every vulnerable Washingtonian. That means our communities of color, our immigrants, our refugees, and our trans folk.